or after the class. So you can interrupt Professor Mikac at any time, or you can also postpone to the end of the class. So the class will be about maybe what 100 minutes, the total up to 2 hours, but maybe after until 3:45 p.m. Indonesian time and 9:45 a.m. in the morning in Zagreb. Please, Dr. Mikac, you can start your session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is my great pleasure and honor to be with you today, and thank you very much for an invitation to be part of your course, Introduction to Political Science. And it is my pleasure that we continue our cooperation. We started it in 2017 when Professor Ari Darmastuti visited us in Croatia, give the lectures at the military academy and also at my faculty. And after that, we continue our cooperation. Year after that, I visit your institution, your university, and it was my great experience. I love it so much. So next year on 2019, 17 of us from Croatia return back to Indonesia, to your faculty, your university, and we held the first our online summer school, first physical school. And after that, we have the online summer schools. We will have it also today. Professor Ari will tell you about that, and we hope that you will join us. And the second thing, I'm looking forward for 1 month in front of us. I will be physically with you in Bad Lampung. Then we will also continue our meetings and our lectures. Okay, shall we start? Okay, let's start. Okay, for the beginning, I want to say you Salaman Sayang, good day to everybody. After that, Nama saya Robert, my name is Robert, and my third expression, what I know, it is apa kabar. I hope that everyone of you is okay for today, that you are in good spirit for following this lecture. Like Professor Ari told you, you can interrupt me during my lecture to ask the questions what you think that it is important for everything what I will say, that you get some explanation right away, or you can take time and leave it your questions for the end of our presentation. First of all, I will tell you just 1 minute about my university, University of Zagreb. It is pretty much old university. It was established in 1669, and for that time working in progress without any stop. That means that we have more than 350 years of the continuation of the work, and it is the largest university in Croatia. Croatia is pretty much a small country comparing to Indonesia, but that university in Zagreb, it is the largest university in my country, and oldest and the largest university in the area of the Central Europe, south of the Vienna, and all the Southeastern Europe. And in Southeastern Europe, you have approximately 15, 16, 17 countries. And between these countries, the University of Zagreb, it is the biggest one. We have totally 34 faculties and academias, and we have more than 70,000 students, Croatians and students who are coming from abroad. We have in the last few years, we have more and more students from Indonesia. And just yesterday, I found out that also at my faculty, we have few students who enrolled the faculty for this academic year. Yesterday, I sent them an email, and I'm looking forward to hear their feedback, to meet them, to discuss them, what they will study. And of course, that I give you that information, and maybe in the future, some of you maybe will take the master or doctoral courses at my faculty. Little bit about myself. It is my 5th job at the university. I start in the military. First of all, I was a soldier, then I work in the anti-terrorist military police operational company. And after that, can we so that we mute all the participants, if it's possible, just to see. I cannot do it. And then I served in Afghanistan. I participated in a NATO mission in Afghanistan in 2005. And second time I was in Afghanistan on 2018, like advisor to Minister of Defense. And I finished my position in military, like commander of military police company. After that, I want to change my position to learn something new, to hear the new stories. And my second professional career was inside of the civil protection. I was head of the state center 112. You know, from the movies, like in the United States, they have the 911. It is emergency number for the people that can call when some emergencies happen. In Europe, we have very similar. It is 112. Every country in the European Union have that number, and this kind of the centers who coordinated the crisis situation in their country. And I was head of this kind of the center for my country. After that, my third job, I was independent police inspector. I worked for a few years inside of the Ministry of Interior, and it was very nice to learn also some new things regarding to this kind of the security sector. Then I get opportunity and chance to be commander of civil protection of my country. I did it for 4 years in capacity of the commander of whole system of civil protection in my country, and I have a lot of experience with the floods, forest fires, migrant crisis, and this kind of the things what we connect with natural man-made disasters. And finally, my position right now at the University of Zagreb, I'm professor. I teach at the Faculty of Political Science from 2015, and I'm very happy with my position because I strongly believe that working on university is the job on the world. And also during that time, I had also 2 additional positions. I was head of the military studies. It is joint program between the military academy and University of Zagreb. For 2 years, I was head of that study. And for almost 5 years, I was advisor in the Homeland Security Council of our president, of the Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović, and Professor Ari Darmastuti. During her visit in Croatia, have opportunity to meet and to have the small talk with our president too. Okay, it is about me. What Professor Ari told you in the introduction, we will have totally 5 meetings. 2 meetings will be related with the approaches to the political studies, and you can see in the column the subtopics what will be covered. For today, we will cover definition of the approach to the context of political science, also legal institutional approach and behavioral approach. In next meeting, we will cover additional approaches to this topic. And you can see the references, the literature, what will be used for this, covering these topics and subtopics. After that, our third meeting will be about political ideology and political views. Just one confirmation, you see my slides are moving. Everything is okay with that?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, it's clear. Yeah, we can read it. Yeah,
Perfect.
that's great.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. After that, our 4th meeting will be about distribution of the power. And finally, our 5th meeting will be about military and the politics. I strongly believe that our 3rd, 4th, and 5th meeting will be happened during my stay at your faculty 1 month in front of us. After that, before we start, I will tell a little bit about how we can also describe and how we can introduce the politics. For example, everybody of us understand that on this picture, it is elephant, isn't it? Yes, of course. And after that, do you know story about 6 blind men and the elephant? The story starts from India and was after that it was famous all over the world. What is the behind of that story about 6 blind men and the elephant? That means when 6 blind men approach the elephant, and because elephant is huge animal, you cannot touch them from the all around. Because of that, blind men can touch just one part of the elephant. And when they touch one part of the elephant, after that, they need to describe what they have feel, what they touch, what they mean that they can feel about touching the elephant. And you can see the result. One of the people say it is the rope. One of them say it is the wall. 3rd of them say it is the tree. After that, one of them say it is snake, it is fan, and it is spear. That means if you cannot see the whole picture, you will be just part of the process. If you cannot experienced something what is the bigger, what is not experienced before, you have the challenge. It is also what we can connect by studying the politics. You need to have the wider perspective to see the processes, to see arena around you. If you don't learn, if you don't experience the approaches, theories, methods, how to learn and how to study the politics, you will see just one part of the something what is happening around you. You will not see the whole picture. And because of that, it is very important that you remember that story about 6 blind men and the elephant. Additionally, I will tell you 3 little stories before we start our lecture today, first, second, and third. First story, it is related with Green Deal. Right now, all over the world, and especially, for example, in Europe, everybody of us talk about Green Deal, how we need to divide the garbage, how we want to arrange the paths, how we want to build the streets, how many parks we will have. And it is something what is happening between the local society, between the people who live in the communities and local authorities. That means that all that story about the Green Deal, on the end, it is a local story, how we arrange our neighborhood, how we arrange our relationship between our neighbors in the building, with our neighbors in the next house, in our valley, in our street. The second story, it is about national politics. I will tell you 3 United States presidents. First of them, George W. Bush. On the beginning of his mandate, 9/11 terroristic attack on the United States was happened, and because of that terroristic attack, President of the United States decided that he will start the global war on terror, that he will introduce much stronger immigration rules, that he will introduce the possibility that security service can overserve and watch and listen domestic people. And because of that, he introduced very strong security measures in domestic politics. President after him, Barack Obama, he was awarded with the Nobel Prize for Peace. He tried to deal with the domestic policy 180% differently. He tried to, from the security, to move to the political aspects of everyday life. He tried to introduce the better healthcare for each American citizen. He tried to have the liberal approach for everyday challenges. He tried to be very proactive regarding to climate change, etc. And on that time, different political parties, Democrats and Republicans, they offer to each other different attitudes and different arguments how to deal with politics. And for example, Republicans accuse the Democrats that they playing the politics. It is not the politics itself, that they playing a politics. And third short story, it is about international organization, United Nations. We know that United Nations was established after the war, second, and that United Nations have the goal, mission that deal with security all over the world, that they deal with humanitarian rights, that deal with try to help the people all around the world. And when we talk about United Nations like organization who is involved in each aspect all over the world, we talk about global arena. And on the end, when we talk about how we see the politics, from one side, we see it like local level approach. After that, when we talk about national level, then it is state level approach to the politics. And then we talk about institutions, for example, like United Nations, then we talk about international level of politics. With that, I come to the content of our today presentation. We will have a few slides regarding to introduction. In introduction, I will tell you just 3 things about what is the goal of our today presentation, what is the aim of our today presentation, and third one, what is our learning objective regarding to today's presentation. After that, we will have 3 main topics for today. First main topic, it is definition of approach in the context of the political science. Second main topic for today, it will be our first of approaches. It is legal institutional approach. We will combine these two approaches in one aspect. And third, our main topic, and it is our second approach, what will we study today? It is behavioral approach. And with that, we will come to the conclusion. After the conclusion, I will show you the literature, what I use for preparing this presentation. And then we will have the question and answer part. And I'm looking forward for your questions, your comments, your attitudes regarding how to study the politics. Dear students, is everything clear for now on? Do you have any questions regarding to this before we start? I will on that time I will check what is in the chat. In the chat, it is written that almost everything is fine. Thank you very much. And I will just respond to be interactive also in this part. Okay, perfect. If you don't have any question, we will start with our introduction. Come on. Okay. First, the key topics covered in this lecture, we will talk first of all about definition of approach in the context of political science. What is the approach? And you will notice that we will work on the different authors' publications, and you will notice that different authors have attitudes, and they emphasize different approaches how to study political science. And it is totally right, because of course that different authors have different opinions, and we need to follow that everybody have the right to express their opinion regarding how to study the politics. The second one, it will be about legal institutional approach. We will see what is most important, what is the core inside of this approach. Of course, from the name, we can notice that it is about the legal things and about how institutions are working. And third topic for today is behavioral approach. It is about how we behave in some circumstances, and we will study how to deal with this approach. What is the aim of our today lecture? First of all, it is to explain the definitions or definition, what is approach, what is behavioral approach, what is institutional approach. Then to show the basic concepts, because if you want to study approaches, and of course, if you want to study the politics, we need to know what are the basic concepts with whom we will deal when we explain the politics and approaches and theories, and etc. Then third main aim for today is to teach about different approaches. And finally, on the end, we will discuss all of above. And I'm looking forward for our discussion. After that, learning objective or goal for today's lecture, it is that we identify a set of tools that students like you and students all over the world can use to sharpen their own political thinking. The next one is to present different ways of organizing and acting in the politics. And third, also important, like first two of them, it is to explain why you and people around you, your colleagues, your friends, your brothers, I see on the picture that also the brothers looks what's happened, how people like you and people around you have ended up with certain opinions on the menu of political possibilities. And our learning objective for today, what I try to give you from this lecture, it is that we define the politics and explain why it is inescapable part of the human existence, because everything what we do in our ordinary life, it is connected with politics. We will study that. The second one is to explain the logic of main approaches of political action. You will notice that we will talk today about different approaches, but we will focus just on two of them for today. And the third learning objective for today is to introduce students how to study politics, because of course that we need to be armed with the knowledge to understand the processes and to study arena around us. And with that, we will start with our first part. And on this picture, you can notice the 5 books. It is about the books, what is the references for your course. And from these 5 books, I took some parts who are related with our today topics. From each of them, from these 5 books, we will also talk about the definition of approaches from each of these 5 books. And later, because you will notice during this first topic that none of these all actors talk about behavioralism and institutional approach. And because of that, just from few of them, we will take approaches, what we have in the further of our discussion. We will start with the first topic. It is definition of approach, and we will start with the first author. It is Professor Andrew Haywood, and on the upper right corner, I put the picture of the author. It is a little bit connection with his mind and his ideas. And Professor Haywood, before starting to define the approaches, he said to us, and he teaches us that first of all, we need to understand that politics, we can divide in 2 columns. First column, it is politics like arena, when we try to follow what is happened in that arena, and when we try to analyze what is happening in arena. And second one, it is politics like a process. It is in the second column. Then when we try to define, to go more in deeper, then you can notice that it is on the left corner, it is definition of the politics, and then in this left corner down, it is the approaches to study of the politics. Professor Haywood want to divide that in different squares. First square in the upper line on the white square, it is defined by the politics as arena and the definition of the politics. And in that white square, he told us that we need to understand what is the art of the government and that what is the political affairs. When he want to explain us how we can define the politics like the process, it is the white square on the right hand side. He talked that we need to understand what is the concept of the compromise and what is the concept of the consensus. And then we need to understand the difference between the compromise and consensus. And also we need to understand the power and distribution of the resources, because he strongly believed that politics is basically about the power and who have the possibility to distribute the resources in our society. After that, Professor Haywood wants to direct us in the line that when we want to study approaches, how to study the politics, when we talk about politics as arena, then we have 3 different approaches. Of course, that we have additional approaches, but he emphasized 3 of them. It is behavioralism, rational choice theory, and institutionalism. And you can notice that these 2, behavioralism and institutionalism, it is something what will be studied for today. And because of that, later, we will also take some parts of the knowledge what Professor Haywood give to us. And he teaches us when we want to approach to the study of the politics from the perspective of the process, then we have different approaches. And he mentioned, for example, feminism, Marxism, post-positive approach, and something else. Okay. When we go further, and once again, he in his book, before coming to approaches, once again, he repeats something what is important and what we need to learn before studying approaches. He wants to learn us that we need to understand that politics, it is also art of the government, how we rule, how we lead our societies. Also that politics, it is public affairs, how we intervene with each other, what is the benefits of we in the society, and to communicate with other institutions, other people, other bodies of the government, and these kind of things. Then he teaches us that we need to learn and we need to study and we need to look on the politics like a compromise and consensus, because it is very hard. We notice that in everyday life that it is very hard to make decisions, especially when you have much bodies what you need to coordinate and much countries what you need to coordinate. For example, if you talk about international arena. And finally, he underlined that politics it is about the power, about distribution of the power, distribution of the resources. After that, after he tried to define the politics in the fourth manner, after that, he explained the concepts like authority, power, civil society, consensus, science, and some other concepts. He believed that it is very important that we understand the way how politics works, and also to understand and to be familiar with the basic concepts of the politics. And after that, we can approach to the approaches and look how to study the politics. And right now in this slide, I will just give a short overview of approaches what Professor Haywood gave us in his book. Of course, he mentioned that there are also many other approaches, but he underlined these 6 of them like important approaches from his opinion, what is important when we try to study politics. It is traditional approach, first of approach. That approach has the strong background in the philosophy from the ancient Greek societies up to these days. After that, it is empirical approach. It is related to what we feel, what we see, what we can realize in everyday society. Then the third one, it is behavioralism. We will talk about that, about behaviors, how to measure behaviors, how we can study behaviors. We will talk about that a little bit later. Then it is rational choice theory. We will work on that theory, on that approach. We will work on our next online meeting. The fifth one, it is new institutionalism. We will talk also about that later today. And also, he mentioned that one of the approaches, what is important for us, it is critical approach. And please notice these 6 of approaches, what Professor Haywood gives to us, because each of authors, what we'll learn a little bit later, will talk about a little bit different types of approaches. The next author, it is Professor Craig Pearson, who teaches us and who try to underline if we want to study the politics, if we want to be part of the politics, if we want to understand what is happening in the politics, first of all, we need to be critical thinker, that we understand, we have possibility to criticize, and also have possibility to defend certain views about the political world against others. That means that we can, of course, in everyday life, we have different opinion from our colleagues, our family members, and we need to understand how things are working, and we need to have the possibility how to argue for our stance, how to try to give the opinion to our colleagues, to our family member about our opinion. And because of that, I have one quotation from his work, that foundation of all independent critical thinking, it is ability to imagine alternative points of view. That means that we need to be, open mind, that we need to be understandable about our choices, but also the choices of people around us. And then Professor Pearson underlined three things what critical thinker and each of us need to be critical thinker, need to imagine politics from 3 different angles. First one, it is to different views of organizing and acting in politics. It is obviously that different people, different organizations have the different ways how to do their business. The second one, it is engagement of the good and bad aspects of the politics. We need to understand that in the politics, all actions are not all of them are not bad, and also that all actions in the politics are not good. That we need to understand that we have many things what is related with what we can qualify like good examples or something what is not good examples, and we need to understand that and be critical regarding to that. And also, if we want to understand and if we want to be engaged in the politics, we need to have opportunity and possibility to explain our own options, our own attitude. And if we want to understand and if we want to have the possibility to explain our opinions and our attitudes, of course, that we need to have the solid background regarding the approaches, theories, and methods of the politics. For the people who are the visual types, I'm one of them. It is very nice picture what Professor Person provide to us. He want to, and he have a little bit different approach how to study approaches to the political arena. First, his approach, it is rational material explanation approach, and it is something what we learn from our childhood, from our surrounding, from our environment. It is something what is common to people for everyday life without any studying of the politics. It is something what we need to learn to survive in our society. That means that we need to follow our path to our goal between different challenges in our life. After that, when we start to live in society, when we start to work in the institutions, in the businesses, enterprises, NGOs, etc., of course, that then we need to have the possibility to explain the world around us from the institutional point of view. That means that when we want to go from our hometown, from our village, to study in Lampung or to study in Jakarta or to study abroad, of course that we need to learn about, institutions, about how institutions work, what is their purpose, what is their goal, how we fit our ideas inside of that arena, what we call the institutional approach. And third one, what is above the first and the second one, it is something how we explain our ideas, our beliefs in this very dynamic and very fast world. That means that we need to also try to find our way through everything what is connected with our beliefs, attitudes, not just ours, but also the people who are living with us, the people who are against us, the people who are living in different countries from different parts of the world. For example, you know that right now in the Europe we have the war between the great power Russia and the smaller country Ukraine, and everybody in Europe have their own opinion regarding what is happened and who is right, who is wrong in that conflict, in that war. And you also need to, when you are involved in this kind of matters, you need to find the way how you will develop, how you will argue your attitudes regarding this kind of thing. Okay, and with this slide, we will finish with Professor Person. We will just underline that he have his approach, how to study approaches in the context of political science, and he underlined 3 basic approaches. First one, it is rational material explanation. It is something with which we start our life, and it is about the clash of interests in our society. The second approach, from his point of view, it is institutional explanation. That means that we need to play by the rules of the games, by the rules of institutions, because of course we like individuals cannot change the institutions. So we need to study them, look on them, and try to find our path regarding to that level of society. And third level of explanation regarding to approaches from Professor Person, it is the ideational explanation. It is about the beliefs and the cultural wars. It is something what we are, what we believe deeply inside of ourselves. It is something what we try to show the people, express our beliefs, our fears, and everything what is related with this particular approach. Okay, After Professor Persson, right now we will come to the Professor Ellen Gripsy. And from my point of view, her explanation, what are the approaches it is most suitable for me. I'm favorite of the Professor Ellen Gripsy, how she explained the approaches to the political science. Professor Gripsy emphasized that political science research approaches are perspectives on how best to carry out our investigations, analysis, and explanation related to politics and political life. I pretty much love this very short but very also simple but very powerful explanation what is approach to the study of the political science. It is the perspective on how best to carry out investigation, analysis, and explanation related to everything what is concerned about the politics. But also we need to have on our mind that Professor Persson is the American political scientist, and that she's focused on elaboration of theoretical approaches that dominate with the discipline of political science in United States. But I pretty much like her approach to the explanation. What are the approaches, the perspective? On the next slide, you will see the very simple but also very powerful explanation. What is the approaches? From her point of view, it is the points of emphasis regarding the ways how we study the politics. First, he told us that approaches are the perspectives, and right now he tells us that approaches are point of emphasis, how, on which way we can study and how we can research the politics. And after that, she emphasized or she underlined or direct us on three approaches. What is the main approaches to study politics inside of the United States? First, it is traditionalism. Second one is behavioralism. We'll talk about that later. And third one, it is post-behavioralism. You can notice that first author have totally 6 approaches, what he underlined. The second author have a little bit different attitude and different approach, how to study the politics with 3 explanation. And this Professor Gripsy, she underlined 3 approaches how to deal with the learning of political science. The 4th book, what will we talk today? It is about 3 authors, about Rod, Martin, and John. And I didn't find the picture of 3 of them. Because of that, I just put here on the upper right corner just picture of the John McCormick. And it is very interesting before that they explain the approaches on different way than previous authors. Previous authors, when they start with their book, they first of all, they try to explain the approaches, and then they explain the world around us and how the approaches are important to study the politics, the state institutions, governments, political parties. But these 3 gentlemen, first of all, they in first chapter on their book, first they explain the key concepts. They explain what is the government, what is the governance, what is the political system, what is the politics, how we deal with the power, what is authority, what is legitimacy, etc. And then in a second chapter of their book, first of all, they talk about state, they talk about different parts of the states, how states was established, how states are dealing, what state have the purpose regarding to the other state, to what they have the purpose, and what is their goal, and how they deal, what services need to provide to the citizens. In the 3rd chapter on their book, they talk about democratic rule. Then they show us some examples all over the world regarding which states have democracy and how the democracy is like the system, what is the challenges and what is the good things, what is some of the less good things when we talk about democratic rule, about possibilities to fight for your right and this kind of thing. Then in their fourth chapter in their book, they talk about authoritarian rule. They mention the countries who have the authoritarian style of leadership, when the politicians decide that they will have the all power. Once again, we talk about the concepts that they will have all power regarding how to deal and how to lead the country, that they will govern regarding the with strong hands, that people will not have so much power and so much possibilities in their countries. And also, when they finished with these four chapters, key concept, the state, democratic rule, and authoritarian rule, then in the fifth chapter, they go for the approaches, how to study political science. And yes, please. Okay, everything's fine. And then in the fifth chapter on their book, they focus on the five, what they think most important theoretical approaches used by political scientists. And you can notice that we have, from the first author, we have the 6 basic approaches. From second author, we have 3 explanations. From third author, we have the 3 approaches. And these 3 professors, they believe and they underline that from many different approaches, that 5 of them are most important. And in this slide, you can see what is these 5 approaches. It is institutional approach, it is behavioral approach, it is structural approach, it is rational approach, and it is interpretative approach. And you can see also on the picture what is the focus, what is the source, and what is the core idea regarding to each of the approaches. For example, for institutional approach, later we will also talk once again about institutional approach. The focus, of course, it is institutions. After that, when we talk where we find the source of our literature and source of our field, how to research the institutions, we will find in political science discipline. And core idea is that institutions provide a framework with which decisions are made. It is main goal of institution, and with institutional approach, we study institutions and how these institutions make decisions. And regarding to these decisions, it's something what everybody of us are dependent, and it's very important to study. The second approach, it is behavioral approach. It is about the people, about how people behave, and the source for research, it is natural sciences. And core idea and what is important in this approach, it is about the individuals, their attitudes, their fears, their beliefs regarding to something, things what is related with the politics. The third approach, it is structural approach. It is about the networks. Networks all around us can be the networks of the NGOs, networks of the states, networks of the cybersecurity item, and where we find the sources for our research, we find in the history field, and it is something about the relationship which form the structures between different entities. Like I said 1 minute before, it can be the structure of the entities in your society between the people. It can be the structure of the states, for example, ASEAN, like International Organization of the countries in Southeastern Asia. It is example of a structural approach of the countries in Southeastern Asia. They established ASEAN like organization. We have these kind of things also like regional organization. We have in Europe like European Union. We also have it in Africa like African Union. It is example of the structural approach when we talk about networks. Then the fourth one, it is rational approach. It is about the choices, what we made in everyday life, and the source of our research, it is in economic. And then we talk about how individuals may make their political choices on the basis of seeking maximal self-interest. That means that, of course, that everybody of us are subjective, and we want to have something much more for ourselves than for other people. And the fifth one is this interpretative approach. The focus is on ideas and sources we find in theology, and it's about the ideas in the politics, how we develop them, how we try to transmit them, how we try to follow them, and everything what is related to that. Okay, just to repeat, these three authors, Rod Haig, Martin Harp, and John McCormick, they believe that from different approaches, the five of them are most important: institutional, behavioral, structural, rational, and interpretative. And on this slide, and of course, you will get my presentation for your use in your study. You can see from each of these five approaches what is the focus, what is the source where you can find the literature, and what is the core idea when we talk about this approach. Once again, to repeat what these three professors teach us, they teach us that we have different approaches, and that five of them, they believe that it is most important when we want to try to study the politics. It is institutional approach, behavioral approach, structural approach, and rational choice approach, of course, interpretative approach. Some of them institutional and behavioral approach we will do a little bit later, and then of course we will once again return back to the book of these three professors. And the last book for today, it is when we talk about the definition of approaches, it is from two gentlemen, from Stephen Tenzi and Nigel Jackson. And you can see I pick up one of the quotation from their book. It is very, very simple, but also it is very, open mind sentence when we try to explain the challenges of studying approaches, and I will read it. These two gentlemen, they state that one of the joys, our happiness, one of our joys, and also one of our frustrations of study of politics lie in the variety of approaches adopted by academic writers to the subject. That means that sometimes when we have too much possibilities, sometimes it is also very hard to define. Sometimes it's very hard to choose what we will take. And because of that, it is very important that you notice, that you learn that we have different approaches, but you need to choose some of them for approaches what you will be study a little bit deeper, and what it will be, the best application for your ideas, how to see the politics, how to see the politics like arena, how to see the politics like process, and how you attitude your beliefs in your society. And after that, these two gentlemen, Stephen and Nigel, they underline that before discussing approaches, first we need to define the terms of concept of the politics itself and the power, because they also believe that politics, it is about the power, about distribution of the resources, and how we can deal with resources in our everyday society. And also they underline that there are different approaches in political science, but they choose three of them, and they underline three of them. First of them, it is traditional scholarship approach. The second one, it is social science approach. And third one, it is radical criticism approach. And you can notice that they don't mention institutionalism and behavioralism, and because of that, we will not deal with their book in the further lecture. Okay, after that, after finishing after finishing our first topic, right now we will continue with the second. It is about the legal institutional approach. And you can see from the upper part of the slide that legal and institutional approaches are very similar, sometimes complementary tools in research of the politics. And in the middle and in the middle of the slide, you can see what is the difference between these two approaches. Institutional approach, it is concerning how to study politics and how to study the political structure like legislature, executive, and judiciary. We know that the politics, when we talk about the government, it is divided in this field like legislature, like parliament, executive, like a government, and judiciary, like a court. And also, institutional approach, it's focused on the rules of the political system, powers between them, powers between the institutions, about the legislative bodies, and how to constitutions work in our society. From that perspective, we will go to the legal approach. Legal approach tends to understand politics in terms of the law, how the institutions are dealing regarding to law. Its focus its attention on the legal and constitutional framework in which different bodies of the government have to function. That means that each institution need to deal and need to work regarding to the laws what our society, what our parliaments are provided to us. After that, regarding to three authors, Rod, Martin, and John, first of all, it is important that we notice that study of the governing institutions it is central purpose of the political science in general and comparative politics in particular. That means that this author underlined, but also many other authors, that political science it is about how to study the relationship between institutions and how to study what it is institutional framework, how the institutions are working and dealing with everyday life and politics. The second important thing is it is about the institutionalism, and institutionalism provides the original foundation of the discipline of political science, and lies at the core of the political science discipline. It's also important to notice that many political scientists believe that institutionalism it is the core of the political science like a discipline, and researching about the institution is something what most of the political scientists are dealing in everyday their life. And the third main important thing is that institutional analysis assume that position within organization are matter more than people who occupy them. That means that for people who are following this institutional approach, they believe that institutions are much more important than people who working in them or people who also expect some services from institutions. Also on this slide, you can see how we can describe the approach inside of the institutional approach, how we can explain the institutional approach from the different lines. We have legislature, executive, judiciary, courts, bureaucracy, and political parties. And in this case study example, you can notice the role and the purpose of each of them. For legislature, it is important that we talk about how we represent the interests of the citizens, how we make the laws, how we make the government. And the example, it is the parliaments, Congress, national assemblies. When we talk about the executive part of the institutional approach, then we talk about governing, about making the policy, how to provide the leadership, how to provide direction in politics. And then examples of that are the presidents, prime ministers, ministers, cabinets, and different part of the executive branch. When we talk about judiciary and the courts, then we talk about how we follow and how we need to obey our constitutions. And examples of that are the Supreme Courts, constitutional courts, the bodies who are responsible to provide decision and to provide the opinion how we deal with certain things, what is related and what is written in our constitutions. The fourth line, it is about bureaucracy. It is the bureaucracy, it is the part of the system in each of our countries who are dealing with the implementing of the policy. Then we talk, for example, about departments, ministries, division, agencies, different bodies who are responsible for implementing different policies in everyday life, in everyday society, in each country. And finally, we talk about the political parties. Political parties, of course, they want to come on the power because they want to share their ideas, they want to lead the countries regarding to their opinions, their ideas. And for example, we can talk about conservatives, liberals, socialists, Greens, nationalists, and different kind of the political parties. After that, of course, that it is not everything is just shiny, that everything with that approach, it is just, you know, that it was well accepted. Each approach and each theory have some challenges, how we interpret and how we deal and how we explain the approach with methods. For the time to time, some theories and approaches are come out of the fashion. They are not in the fashion, they are not in flavor anymore. And also that happened with legal and institutional approach. That approach, what has happened in the 50s to the 60s of the last century, because some new approaches and some new view how we need to study the politics and what is the importance of the politics. And because of that, during the 50s and the 60s of the last century, legal and institutional approach, they come out of the focus of our studying, and because some of other approaches, for example, behavioralism, want support and start to be dominant approach how to study and how to approach the political science. And what is something what people criticize regarding to institutional approach, it is that it is too much descriptive and that look too much on the formal rules of the government on expense of the politics of many different forms. And because of that, people, political scientists, stop to use that approach, not use it like before. Of course, that some of them continue to use that approach to explain the political, especially institutions, but many of the political scientists move to some new approaches, for example, behavioralism or new institutionalism, or some different approaches. One new upgraded approach inside of institutionalism is new institutionalism. Once again, after 50s and 60s, when this approach was going down, and once again during the 80s of the last century, with new views that once again it is need to put emphasis on the study the institutions. After that, the new approach called the new institutionalism was returned back on the focus of the political sciences and goes beyond the formal rules and looks how institutions shape decisions and define the interests. Right now, the study is not about institutions and how they work. Right now, the focus is how institutions shape decisions and define the interest, because it's a little bit more deeper. It is about fine-tuning about what institutions are work, how they deal, how make decisions, and what is the consequences of these decisions. After that approach, right now we come to the behavioral approach. It is our third topic and our second approach for today. And from the previous slides, you can see you can see that during the institutionalism that we also have some approaches for what replace institutionalism like the main focus of the research in political science. And one of them it is behavioral approach. during the 60s, we have this focus was putting on the individual behavior, particularly in American political science. And after that, also in different parts of the world, political scientists also follow that approach, and they much more start to study political behavior of individuals. For example, on this slide, you can see that the focus was moved from electoral system to the voters, from legislature to legislator, and from the presidency to the president. And also, what is important to underline when we talk about this approach, that the idea of behavioral approach, it is that we study behaviors of us, behavior of people, and the main idea regarding to that behaviors is something what we learn in interaction with the environment where we are living, and because of that, it is very important to understand not just behavior of some individual, but also to understand the environment, the context where that people is work, living, what is interaction with other parts of the society, and then to study his behavior. Professor Haywood tried to explain that this approach, behavioral approach, enables us to research behavior of the voters, behavior of the people who make the laws, behavior of the local politicians, for example, also behavior of the lobbies who try to pursue us about some topics, about resources, etc. That means when we talk about this approach, behavioral approach, it's about the things, it's about
What the hell, Agus Risma?
it is about the beliefs, what we believe, that it is our opinions and how we can attitude our opinions and explain them to other people around us. Professor Grisby states that behavioralism defining elements include the focus on political actors and then their behavior or attitudes or opinions. You can notice that from one author we have focus on the voters, for example, local politicians, about people who make the laws, and Professor Grisby, it is on that path, and he said to us that when we talk about behavioralism, that behavioralism, it is focused on political actors and their behavior. And we need to understand that each of us can be the political actor. Because of that, we need to have, first of all, critical possibility of critical thinking, to also try to pursue the people about our beliefs, our ideas, our fears. And of course, if people start to listen us, start to follow us, then we also start to be political actors. For example, we have many of the possibility how we can research behavioralism. Or here it is the example that the people who are follow this approach, they usually employ survey research to compare the attitudes of the voters versus non-voters, elites versus non-elites, partisans, insiders versus independent people, or other subunits of the population. That means that also you can study something like case study for itself, or you can deal with comparative politics to compare some parts of the society, some units of society with other units who are, for example, on the opposite side, or you can also compare the beliefs of the people in Indonesia, Malaysia, or some other parts of the world and see what they believe regarding or what they think about some different topics, about, for example, Green Deal, about the war in Ukraine, about the food shortage, and this kind of thing. And of course, also behavioralism, like also institutionalism, have some challenges. And when the political scientists try to solve these challenges, they try to improve behavioralism. and try to improve with new knowledge, new features, and they try to develop a new approach. It's called post-behavioral. Today, we will not talk about that approach. It was main purpose to explain what is behavioralism like approach. And the authors, Rod, Martin, and John, when they approached to the behavioral approach, they try to explain us that this approach examines politics at the level of the individuals, relying to primary on quantitative analysis of the example survey. That means that also these three authors give us also the methodology, how the best, what is the best way how we deal with behavioral approach and how to approach to the study of the politics. Also, these three gentlemen told us that this approach, behavioralism, it is approach to the study of politics that emphasize people over institutions, studying the attitudes on the behavior of individuals in search of scientific generalization. That means it is totally opposite from the institutional approach. We said that on institutional approach, the main goal is to study the institution, the behavior, and how they make decisions, and that institutions are much more important than people who are occupied them or the people who are dependent from institutions. In this approach, in behavioralism, it is totally opposite. In this approach, we believe that people are much more important than institutions. And because of that, it is very interesting to, for example, in some research, to combine these two approaches and see what will be outcome of your research. And also, we have one additional critique regarding to this approach. It is that you can see, I quote these three gentlemen, that behavioralism produces a political science with too much science and too little politics. That means that maybe this approach is too much theoretical, it is less empirical, and it is also the challenge for that approach. But also, please remember what we said on introduction, that no theory or no approach, and also no one method can explain everything what we can learn and what we can study inside of politics. Because of that, we need to learn about different approaches, different possibilities, and to compare them when we study the political science. And finally, we almost come to the end of our presentation for today. In this slide, I will just underline what we went through today. First of all, we try to define the approach in the context of political science. We have 5 different books, 5 different group of authors, and you notice that some of them, they underline that we have many approaches how to study and how to deal with political science, and then some of them emphasize main approaches, what they believe that is most important approaches when we talk about political science, like discipline, and like politics, like everyday process and arena. Then after that, we talk about institutional approach and legal approach. It is about the institutions, how institutions work, and about legality, about following the law, about following the constitution. And when we talk about this approach, then it is most important to notice that if we take this approach, then we mainly will study the politics, how institutions work inside of the politics, and how institutions define decisions, and how other people or other countries, other institutions also react on decisions what institutions are made. And the third topic today was behavioral approach. In this approach, we talk about our individual beliefs, our individual behavior regarding to environment, regarding to the everything what is happened in the side of the politic arena and politics like a process. And in this approach, we learned that people are most important and much more important than, for example, institutions, where institutions are once again most important subject inside of the institutional or legal approach. And I will have 3 points of conclusion. First point is that political science research approaches offer us a perspective on how best to carry out investigation, analysis, and explanation related to the politics and political life. It is from Professor Grisby, and I like it so much. It is very simple that approaches are perspectives, how to look, how to learn, and how to deal with politics. The second point of my conclusion is that theoretical approaches are ways of study politics and help identifying the right question to ask and how go to about answering them. In first line of conclusion, we have that approaches are perspective. In this second line, we have that approaches are ways how to study, how to make a question, how go for the answer. And third, my point for conclusion is that approaches are tools which enable us, to students, to our friends, to our colleagues, how to recognize why political actors act, and also about why political writers write about politics on different radical point of view. That means, to underline full conclusion, I believe, and also I take back from the books what I showed to you, the political scientists who write the books, that approaches is about talking about perspective, it is talking about the ways, and also it is the tools who provide us with the knowledge, with opportunity, how to understand the politics and everyday life around us. It is the main literature what I used to prepare this presentation. Professor Haywood Person, Ethan, Professor Crispin, Sadler, John, and Goring, then 3 gentlemen, Rod, Martin, and John, and finally Stephen and Nigel Jackson. With that, we come to the part with your question and question part, your comment part, and I'm looking forward to hear your question. Right now, I will check in the check what we have in the check. We have
Vulcan.
We have, you know, Indonesia language. I don't understand.
Vulcan Raffi Pratama. Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Vulcan, give your question.
Okay, Mulkan, thank you very much. Please ask a question.
Hello, Mulkan.
Good morning. Can anyone hear my voice?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
First of all, beforehand, thank you very much, Kepala, Professor Mikac, for the presentation earlier.
Sama-sama.
I have 2 questions regarding on the in this session today. The first was about regional politics on the basis. As we know, Europe has 27 member states, and in the EU, there is a regulation called directives, and it was by nature legally binding. That means if Brussels, for example, launch new directives, each member state of the EU must implement those rules into their constitution, for example. From this, and if there is a country, member states in the EU that perhaps resist these regulations, maybe, what is the approach that we use to understand this phenomenon? That is the first question, Professor. The second one is that about Ukraine. From what I watched in the news, that the Ukraine wanted to enter NATO, but when I see, like, for example, recent news that the president of the Ukraine, Zelensky, I say that we have applied for NATO, etc., etc. But I don't see the NATO members really accepted the proposal. What approach can we use to examine this phenomenon? That is my second question. Thank you very much, Professor, for this.
Dear Mokan, thank you very much for your two questions. I will first answer, of course, first question regarding to directives of European Union. Thank you. Very, very good point of view. Of course, that directives are secondary line of the regulation in EU. The first line, it is the establishing treaties of the EU, and each member state country need to follow the establishing treaties. The second line of the legislation inside of the EU are regulations, directives, and decisions what European bodies are made. What is happened when some country don't follow directives? We have right now that example is regarding to Hungary. Hungary don't want to follow what each other country and what EU institutions make the sanctions regarding to Russia Federation because the war in Ukraine. What's happened after that? The EU have the possibility to stop the funds which Hungary will receive. It is one way. The second way, it is to stop the possibility that Hungary we have possibility to make the joint decisions inside of the EU level. Third possibility is to try to pursue the Hungary, for example, that their opinion, their decision about the following the sanctions, it is not something what it's on the what EU together want to have. To emphasize my answer regarding to your question, what is happened when some of the countries of full member of EU don't follow the directive? EU have the instruments to sanction that country, and mainly it will be on that way, it will be economically that country will not get the funds from EU. Because each of the countries of EU who are full member need to every year to give the funds inside of the EU, and after that these funds are distributed back to the countries. That means that Hungary will need to pay their share in the EU budget, but not will get the funds back in the Hungary. It is the main tool what European Union have with countries who don't deal with the procedures or don't follow the directives. Regarding your second question regarding the war in Ukraine between Russia regime and Ukraine, yes, of course that Ukraine want to become full member of the NATO and European Union, and of course you know it's totally right that many of the EU countries or NATO countries are not very happy, and of course they will not approve this approach, and they will not give full support of Ukraine to be the quick member state of both organization. Why? Because European Union and the NATO, they want to accept the countries in full membership who don't have any territory disputes with other countries, who don't have the wars, who don't have the crisis, because the main political goal for the NATO and the European Union is then when some country entering the full membership, that means that EU or NATO alliance need to be stronger, not weaker, and not to be exposed to the outside danger. And what is the best approach is to study right now what is happening in the war between the Russia and Ukraine. Of course, it is institutional approach, and of course it is structural approach about the networks, about the systems, and this kind of things. So I will advise you, if you want to study deeper what is happening in the Ukraine, the war in Ukraine between the Russia and the Ukraine, of course, please study in this institutional approach, how institutions work, and please study structural approach, how the structure, how the networks are work, what is the relationship between different countries in the, for example, regional context of the security. Okay, dear Molkan, thank you very much for your question. Next question, please.
Thank you, Professor, for the answer.
Okay.
Sama-sama.
We have Alika Salma. Okay, Alika. Unmute your-
Political approach is divided into two, like traditionalism and the other. Personally, which approach is the best to understand politics more, especially in your country, Croatia, between
Yeah,
tradition and behavioralism.
Dear Alika, thank you very much for your question. It is very, very good question. Depends about what you want to have from your research and what you want to have from your understanding. If you want to understand how Croatia works from the legal basis in the international system, how our institutions are provided resources to our people, then of course we need to study institutional approach, because from institutional approach have the tools how we can see inside of the institutions, how institutions shape decisions, what is important, how we follow what Molkan said a little bit earlier, how we follow the EU directives, etc., etc., etc. On other hand, when we want to see how people, citizens of my country, how they are satisfied with institutions, then of course we need to take the behavioral approach to study their beliefs, their happiness, their fears, their behavior in everyday life, and of course the relationship with institutions, how they are satisfied with decisions, what institutions are produced on a daily basis. So I will underline my answer. If we want to fully understand the situation in each country, in Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Bangkok, Croatia, then we need to have the comparative approach. We need to also compare the different approaches, for example, institutional approach, critical approach, behavioral approach, and some other approaches. For today, we just mentioned and talk about two approaches, institutional and the behavioral approach. Next time, when we have the, once again, online meeting, then we will have additional approaches what we will study. And then we will underline all approaches and we will see what are the best choices for our everyday life to be, part of the society and to understand the processes around us. Dear Alika, thank you very much for your question.
Yeah, next we have Afiyah. Afiyah Nur Kamila. Okay, please Afiyah.
Okay. I would like to ask a question, Professor. Actually, I have two questions before, but I think the first question of mine already answered by Alika before, so I would like to ask my second question. But it is out of the topic, so, but I still want to know about your opinion. I believe that I read a book from Craig Person, The Introduction to Political Science. I think it was the first pages of the books. And there's a saying that goes that just because you do not take an interest in politics does not mean politics does not take an interest in you. So like this book say that we cannot even escape from politics, right? Why is it escaping from politics is a dead end? Because like, is it true that if we try to escape from the politics, we do not end up free, but we end up with a very worse scenario, like worse politics and government? So I would like to ask about your opinion. Thank you.
Dear Afia, thank you very much for your question. It is also not just a political question, it is also about philosophical question, what we want to deal, how we're gonna deal, what we want to be, part of everyday society, because today it is very challenging world. For example, every day we are bombed with so many informations, we are bombed with disinformation, with fake news, with everything what is related to what's happened. For example, when President Donald Trump was president of the United States, we have situation that we have post-truth society. It does not matter what is truth, but what is our opinion. It does not matter, what is our beliefs, but some, social groups, how they pursued us, that what is important in our everyday life. And because of that, I fully agree with Professor Persson when he wrote that if we don't deal with the politics, politics will deal with us. What that means, that we need to be, open-minded. And he also talked about that then we need to be critical thinker, because we cannot avoid politics around us. Everything is politics. You will notice that at your faculty, at your university, at your community, that everything what is related with decisions, distribution of the power, distribution of the resources, it is about the politics. It is local politics, it is educational politics, it is faculty politics. And because of that, we need to understand the processes and arena around us. And of course, we need to, find our space, our place inside of the, local, regional, state affairs, and try to understand what is happening around us. Try to have our own opinion, and also if we have enough knowledge, we can, we can stand and we can fight for our beliefs. But also we need to be smart, not to lose our head for some ideas what is not purpose, And because of that, to underline and to finish my answer, of course, I fully agree that politics, it is too much politics around us. Unfortunately, we cannot avoid it. And the best possibility for us is to learn about politics, to kind of recognize the processes, and to make decision what is good, what is bad, when we need to intervene, and we need to be, from side, just to look what is happening. We need to make decisions in our life, and we cannot avoid to make decisions. Thank you, Afia.
Okay, if there is any question anymore? Maybe Elias or Charles?
Okay, if you don't have question, I have a last slide. It's called
Muzamil. Oh, sorry, Robert. We have Muzamil.
Yeah, super. Muzamil, please.
Muzamil, please.
With due respect, first of all, respected professor, I hope that you will be fine. I am Muzamil Kafir, the international student of UNILA, Lampung University. Basically, I'm from Afghanistan. So, first of all, you are well aware that everyone knows that every person have entitled or have the right to choose their own government by a vote or by supporting them. And actually, when a state or government is being concussed or being forcibly taken by a terrorist group or another group, so here, what is the responsibility, or what would be the responsibility against them, against the groups who took a country by conquest of international community or other countries according to law? What will be their responsibility? Thank you.
Dear Muzamil, thank you very much for your question, and I'm very sorry what's happened in your country. I was twice in the mission in your country, and for example, for my country, more than 5,500 men and female was in the mission in your country. We try to help your country, but unfortunately, it's happened what's happened. Your question is very hard, and I believe that I don't have right answer because it is very complex. It is too complex to explain in one short answer. What's happened, for example, in your country, and what you mentioned in your question, that some group, you call them terrorists, to the country, and what is possibility to people to do, to international community to do, it is very hard. You can approach that from the personal level. For example, you like a person, you can choose what you can do in your country. If you don't obey the rules of the violent people, probably your family will lose your life. Then what is your second choose? You can leave your country. You can be, migrant. You can be the refugees. It is some of your choices. What the regional politics in that part of the world, it is what we see that it is not countries around Afghanistan are pretty much friendly to Afghanistan. It is the big challenge, this big missed opportunity for your country. After that, when we talk about international politics, you notice that in from 2001 to 2021, for 20 years, international community tried to provide help, tried to provide resources, tried to provide manpower to help the Afghan people to, to have their own country, to build institutions, to try to help them how to institutions need to work. But unfortunately, unfortunately for especially for Afghan people and also for the regional politics and international politics, we didn't be successful in that mission, and we failed. We on the end of that mission, we left the Afghans once again to the people who have some other ideas how the country need to be ruled. And because of that, I'm not pretty much sure that I answer on your question, because I strongly believe that it is very, very hard to answer. But I hope so that you and me, we will meet each other for one month, and I will be physically in Bad Lampung, and then we can continue this conversation about Afghanistan, about how to deal with situation and some violent people took the government and what is the choice. Thank you, Muzamil, for your question.
Okay, right. Thank you, respected professor. Thank you.
Sama-sama. Okay. Because very shortly I will have next lecture physically here at the Military Academy. I pretty much enjoyed in today's lecture. Thank you very much. It was, it was a little bit theoretical, but when we be together in Bad Lampung, I'm looking forward then. I strongly hope so that we will have more case studies, more examples, more conversation, question and answer part to be, more dynamic, to talk about politics, about everyday life, about the experiences. And I will enjoy to meet you, to greet you, and to be in your faculty for 1 month. But before that, of course, we will have additional one online lecture before that.
Yes. Thank you very much for today's class. Yeah, Professor Mikac, we are grateful to have you here joining us through online, but we are, of course, impatient to meet you in person. Yeah, in mid-November, just before we also have, we will have also the continuation of our summer school, online summer school for this year, although you are going to organize it from Denpasar. Okay, yeah. Thank you very much. And also for you guys, students, you are having a very good time with him. As we will have another online class on November the 10th. And then after that, we will meet you November, just let me check. It is 14, 15, and 16, yeah? Yep. In November, through, we call it as luring here, yeah? In-person class, yeah? In class, okay. Okay, thank you again, and have a good time for you. Have this is the Franja Tutsman. Are you in Franja Tutsman?
Sorry?
Are you in Franja Tutsman? Military Academy?
Yeah, Military Academy Franja Tutsman. Yeah. On that spot.
Okay, so the one that I gave the lecture over there back in 2017. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and thank you again. Meet you next week. No, in 3 weeks, yeah? In 3 weeks.
Yeah,
again.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Looking forward. All the best.
Yes.
Take care. And once again,
I think we need to take a picture.
Yeah,
so you can close, you can stop share, and then we will have on cam all of the students.
Okay, perfect. I stop sharing.
Yes. Okay, please on cam.
Who will take the picture?
Yeah.
Ari, you will take the picture?
Yes, I do.
Perfect.
Okay. And the second slide. Okay, the third slide. We have 5 slides
Lampung,
here.
Isn't it?
Yeah, Lampung, yes. And last slide, just a minute. Yes, just a minute. Last slide. Oh, we have 8.
8 slides. Wow.
Yeah. Oh my God, 184. The record.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. And see you again on November the 10th.
That's right. Thank you. God bless you, and
Thank you,
see you
Prof.
very, very
Mikac.
soon.
And you too.
Bye bye.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Prof.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you.